Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is bottle. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you're most likely to hear or see the verb bottle used is to mean to place liquids into bottles or jars. Now, if you've watched many of these videos, you know I'm not a fan of using another form of a word. So you can see the noun form bottle used in this definition. So to make it the definition maybe a little bit clearer, I've got a picture here that I think can help us. So in the right-hand corner, right, is a bottle. Typically, these are made from glass or plastic. Not always, but most of the time, you're going to see kind of what's called the neck of it get a little thinner than the body or the base of the bottle. Okay, so anytime we're placing liquids into a series of bottles, we can use the same verb. A second and probably less common way to hear bottle used is in connection to storing gas in some type of container, usually under pressure. You should know that the verb bottle is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, I'm going to drop the E and add ing to form bottling. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D since this verb already ends in an E. Now my base verb, bottle, ends in an L sound, and L sounds are voiced sounds. This means when I add that past tense ending, I'm just going to make a D sound. So I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I say it. So it should sound like this: bottled, bottled. Okay. Now, I've got one phrasal verb for us to discuss, and the phrasal verb is bottle up. This can have two common meanings. The first way people use it is to talk about concealing or hiding their feelings for a long period of time. So this definition might sound really different than those earlier ones that we were discussing, but if we think about it, kind of think of our bodies like a bottle, right? We put our feelings down and we keep kind of filling it up, right? That's what we're describing here. So an example of this might be, he always bottles up his anger, but eventually it boils over. Right? So many people would say it's not always healthy to continue to bottle or hide one's feelings, right? Because then they can kind of overflow. A second way bottle up gets used is to mean to keep someone or something sort of confined or unable to move from a particular space. An example of this might be, we've been bottled up for the last few days due to the snowstorm. Right? So kind of the idea here, not able to leave our house, the weather's been too bad to drive or go anywhere, or possibly even walk. Okay? Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we're going to practice the past progressive and the simple future with a focus on be going to. Let's start with the past progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that was ongoing during some point or duration of time in the past. And many times you will see in other books, or maybe you have another teacher that calls this the past continuous. That's great. They mean the same thing. The reason I like saying past progressive with my students is the two P's, so the P in past and the P in progressive, are going to help me remember I need two parts to make my verb. So in the affirmative, I'm going to have my subject. And if my subject is you, we, or they, I use were and then the ing form the verb. But if my subject is I, he, she, or it, I use was, and then the ing form of the verb. Here's an example. The plant was bottling cases of counterfeit alcohol when police raided it. So Here's a great example of a past progressive sentence. So we have this ongoing action, and many times when we see past progressive, we also see the simple past tense used in the same sentence. That simple past tense is the action that interrupted the thing that was ongoing or the thing that was continuing. Okay, so here the interrupting action is raid. Now let's talk about making negative past progressive sentence. To do this, I start with my subject, and again, I use was or were, depending on what that subject is, then not, and then the ing form the verb. Here's another example. He wasn't bottling up his thoughts behind his rough and tough exterior. This sounds like a sentence out of a story, kind of describing someone here who was not in sort of an ongoing action of hiding or concealing those feelings. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the past progressive. To do this, I start with was or were, whichever form matches my subject, and that subject comes next. Then I use the ing form of the verb. Here's my last past progressive example. Were they bottling their sweet tea before the pandemic? I think there were a number of businesses, restaurants in particular, that realized, we're not going to have customers coming in regularly, needing maybe there are certain things that we make that are very special or popular that we could turn around and sell. So this would be an example of a question here asking maybe if a restaurant or a series of businesses here had started the process of putting their specialty drink into bottles. Now let's talk about the simple future. Today we're going to focus on using be going to. This is really common when people are discussing their plans, the actions that they are going to do in the future. You might occasionally see it with predictions or promises, but most commonly it's going to be focused on plans. So the thing about using be going to is I'm going to have to pay attention to my subject. And the reason for that is I'm going to use the present form of be as I make this verb tense. So if my subject is I'm going to have am going to and then the base verb. But if my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are, A-R-E, going to, and then the base verb. And finally, if my subject is he, she, or it, I'm going to use is going to, and then the base verb. You can see this in my example. We're going to bottle this feeling we have today, and then we're going to turn it into an election win next year. This sentence came from a politician who I believe had lost, or maybe it was his party who had, right? And it was kind of talking, trying to motivate people. So it kind of goes back a little more figurative, we might say, not a literal thing here, but the politician kind of wanted people to remember this feeling in order to turn it into something positive in the future. Now let's look at making a negative simple future sentence. Again, I start with my subject, I use the form of be that matches, then not, then going to, and the base verb. Here's an example. They aren't going to bottle things up to explode down the line. Right? So again, that's back to that idea of like eventually all of one's feelings coming out in maybe a not so good way. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, I start with a form of be, whichever form matches my subject, that subject comes next, then going to, and then the base verb. Here's our last example. Is the restaurant going to bottle and sell their popular salad dressing? So again, we're talking about putting the action or asking really about a plan here of someone putting their liquid, their salad dressing, into bottles. Whether they're plastic or glass, we don't know. And that's okay. Now let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb bottle. And you won't be very shocked here to know that the first thing we're going to discuss is the noun form of this word. So, bottle has the same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as a noun. And like our verb, this noun can have a few different meanings. So one way you hear the noun bottle used is to refer to that container. Again, commonly made out of glass or plastic that is used for storing drinks or other liquids. An example of this might be, he prefers to buy bottles of sodas to cans, right? And some people have that preference. They like drinking soda or carbonated beverages from a glass container versus aluminum. Now, a second way to use the noun bottle is used in reference to heavy drinking. This would be drinking alcohol in particular. So this is not about carbonated beverages or water. So an example of this might be, more women in their 20s are hitting the bottle. And you might see that phrase. Again, it suggests that someone is drinking alcohol excessively. So if someone has one drink, we wouldn't use this phrase, but a lot, or again, as the definition says here, heavy drinking. A third way we see the noun bottle used is to refer to the container that is used to give milk or other drinks to babies and very young children. So an example of this might be, what time will you give the baby her next bottle, right? Last word for us to talk about today is a noun you might encounter. It's bottleneck. This can have a couple different meanings. One is to refer to a point of traffic congestion. So usually it's kind of one area maybe that has narrowed. There are fewer lanes. It's really slowing down a particular area or stretch of road or highway. An example of this might be, the new lane will hopefully reduce bottlenecks on the interstate. So this sentence is suggesting something new has been built, maybe more lanes here to accommodate and make traffic flow more smoothly. Now, a second way the noun bottleneck gets used could be to refer to a person or something that slows or halts progress or some kind of free movement. So you might hear this word used at work. So an example of this, we need to talk about how to reduce production bottlenecks. So here, maybe we have a company who produces, manufactures, makes things, right? And at some point in the process, things kind of stop or they slow down, right? And things are not kind of continuing down the step. So this sentence is suggesting we need to figure out a way to find what's slowing us down or what's stopping our progress to be able to produce more quickly or more efficiently. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.